Toot and Norberline would like to welcome everyone to the Friday Night Public Talk. Tonight we're going to hear from Gina de la Chesnaye. Thank you, Jenna, for coming out, talking to us about your Nachan Project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I know some of you. Lorraine and Laura have taken my classes. Lorraine still is, and Laura, maybe you'll join again. So my name is Jenna, thank you. And I've been sharing Qigong practice through Thupten Norberling now for 2 years, I guess, I suppose. And but I've been a yoga and meditation teacher for about 10 years and maybe even longer than that. And I am the founder and director of the Nachan Project. If anyone has not taken a chance yet to look at the site, the Nachan Project is based in Uganda, in the slums of Katwe, Kampala. I'll just talk a little bit about it, and then I'm going to share a video that I put together, and maybe some images, and then we'll talk about what it's like actually offering practice in a place that has so little. So we offer mindfulness-based practices for trauma and resiliency to the women and children of the Karamojong tribe living in the slums of Katwe. They have been affected by drought, flooding, conflict, famine, and they migrate into the slums. And then we also offer psychosocial support, public health advocacy, humanitarian aid, and skills training, because it is my hope to help break the cycles of suffering in every way possible. And that means doing what I can to get them access to, and I even hate saying them, right? So this is something that we're going to talk about is right speech, right? Because the moment I say them, I'm othering, right? Where I can work towards helping my sisters and their children basically have access to sanitation, menstrual health hygiene, healthcare, immunizations, vaccine, food, everything, education, employment, right? And I don't know about you guys, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately, which is that when I first started practicing all of these practices, right? I remember my teachers reminding us how fortunate we were to be sitting in a room, right? A yoga studio or a meditation studio with nobody trying to kill you, actively trying to kill you, right? Where you have the space and the time to practice, what an incredible privilege that is. We've all generated the merit to be able to do that, but to remind yourself of that, and of how extraordinary that is. And also to have it is a luxury to have a spiritual practice. It truly is. So, and I think that, in all honesty, I think that people, I can only speak for New York City, maybe parts of California, but I think that people have forgotten that, So what I'd like to do is, I'm going to share a video. So now I have screen sharing capabilities, yes? Okay. Let me get this in proper place. All right. So this is a video that back in February, when I'd first come back, I was there for 3 weeks in January, and the Nachan Project I've been doing now for about 4 years, but I've been working in East Africa since 2016. And this is a video that I was asked to put together by Nina Rao, who some of you may know. She is a kirtan singer. She's been right up there with Krishna Das for many, many years. And she had asked me to put together the video and to help support me and to share it with Live, Serve, Remember, which is Baba Ram Das's Sangha that meets once a month. So I'll just show it and we'll watch it. Okay, everybody can see that, yeah? Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna hit play. That's Chris. Yeah, not a lot of room.
They sleep here four in this room that you see. Mr. From sent me books. Every day they pay 3,000 shillings on a daily to sleep in this house. So they rented 3,000 shillings on a daily. That's $1.
That's Moses. We're gonna do two good Nachan, yeah? So throughout the pandemic, we were able to help keep about almost 1,200 people alive through donations, and that's us handing out maize flour. And there's Moses again. And finally, I was wearing a Ramdas shirt. And there's Christy. So that's just a short little video. When I was there a couple of weeks ago, I was there again for 3 weeks, and I focused my intentions on shooting a documentary and a series of portraits, which you can see the portraits on my Instagram page if anybody's interested. The Karamojong, unfortunately, have been maligned within Uganda and are treated as they're the most marginalized of the marginalized. And it was my intention to witness them and to share their stories and to remind everyone that there's no difference between the Karamojong and ourselves, except for that they have nothing. So, you know, some of you I know are have been doing mind-body practices for a while, and you may have seen some things happening there in the practice that we were doing. You know, the women were mirroring me, and we were laughing, and it was a circle, and you know, it was community, it was sangha, and that is my intention. And I keep coming back to that word, intention, right? It is my intention to be able to offer them the skills that we all practice to help regulate their nervous systems so that they can open and widen out to loving kindness and compassion and wisdom. You know, it is inappropriate in a situation where people have nothing and they're absolutely struggling to survive to talk about karma or emptiness. right? So we start with offering. And so I'll just pause for a moment, and if anybody has any questions, also I know that this is scheduled to go till my 9:30, your 7:30, Amanda's maybe 8:30. But we may end a little bit earlier. So if you have any questions or thoughts, please go for it. It's also, this is a conversation.
I would like to say that your portrait photography is absolutely beautiful. Of course, I follow you on Instagram, and I've been following this as much as I can. And it's love your work there. It just seems like you have such a camaraderie, and Moses is your little bestie, and it's adorable.
I think he and I were partners in a past life. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, but I'm seeing some similarities. When I was an anthropology student in Utah, we went to Mexico, the Tarahumara region, and stayed with the Raramuri people, who are probably the most marginalized people in northern Mexico. And they live in similar situations and everything. So we were there putting in potable water systems that were basically gravel and charcoal, stuff like that. So yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to stay with any project there. So I don't know. Well, how did you get involved in this project?
The practical answer would be that in 2016, I was invited to co-lead a week-long contemplative-based trauma and resiliency training at Macquarie University with Gay Logan, who runs the International Center for Mental Health and Human Rights. So I'm on the faculty of that organization. And I kept coming back, and then I did the Harvard training in refugee trauma and recovery with Gay, and I met another Ugandan psychologist, and we kind of teamed up and went back, and I just kept going back. And because I don't go to a place and leave. I go and I go and I go and I go and I learn and I offer and receive. Like, I'm receiving as much as I'm giving. Do you know what I mean? And the non-practical answer, or the depending upon how you see it, I definitely have some kind of very deep karma with the Karamojong, 100%. I have to say, so I kept going back, and my friend, so when I did that training, my friend Alan Katwe, he is now my field supervisor. He and I became friends, and he asked me for some help on I see your hand, Laura. Hold on one sec. He asked me for some help on doing some grant writing and things like that. And, and he became like my little brother and a really good friend. And he invited me to go to Katwe and to Chesnaye. I went to Chesnaye first, which is a slum in Kampala as well, mostly for the street boys. And what I'd witnessed was just tore my heart out. I saw children who were doing jet fuel and had nothing at all. And then, like I said, I kept coming back. I didn't offer practice for at least 2 years, I don't think. I just went and spent time there and got to know people. And then, because it's not appropriate at all, right? And this goes to right action, right? It's not appropriate for this half white, half Mexican woman to go into the slums and be like, let's do yoga. Not appropriate at all. That's just another form of colonialism, right? Right. And you could even take it further and be like, I'm appropriating, yoga. And some people do think that. But then I went to Katwe, and I was in this tiny shack. And as you've seen on some of the photographs that I've posted, Lauren, sometimes there's 40 people living in a tiny, tiny place, which makes infectious disease very happy, But I was in this tiny shack, and I offered practice to the women, and they loved it, and I was very careful also. I was very careful not to right? A lot of the women are not well, they're sick, or they have a lot of injuries and they've been assaulted and brutalized, and right. So very simple trauma-informed practices. And I couldn't walk away. I couldn't walk away. And so here we are now, and I've gotten deeper and deeper into it. Laura, please ask.
Yeah, you started to answer my question, which was I was super curious about how you figured out when it was right to start to offer practice. Like, how did that feel? How did you know?
You feel, like you feel it, right? Like you and I we haven't seen each other in a while, but we've talked about how, and this is where right mindfulness comes in, right? Like I'm utilizing my body and my nervous system always to feel what's going on and to feel what other people are experiencing. Not that I'm going to know 100%, but our nervous systems are picking up other people's nervous systems all the time. So, at first it would just be play. And then it was like, hey, let's try something out, and then it became a little bit more organized and a little bit more organized. And now when I was there in July, we had and now we have our own shelter, which is amazing. A friend of mine donated money to build a shelter, like a proper shelter. Brenda, who's our mindfulness instructor, she calls it the temple. And she's Ugandan. But we had, I think, about 175, almost 200 women practicing with me, which is extraordinary. So it's really grown. And it's, and every day it's, I have moments, I think I've shared, Lorraine, that's definitely heard me say this, where I'm just like, how the hell did this happen? Right. But that's kind of, I don't know about the rest of you, but it's like when you follow your path, you are on your path very clearly, which is why, I wanted to talk about tonight about the project, and to share it. And also because, I mostly hang out in the daytime with the Sangha. I don't really hang out in the evening times too often with the Tinorbaling, unless Venerable Robina's around, because she's my teacher. But I wanted to talk about like what it's like to have a practice as one is offering globally, right? Because there's so much involved with it, and it's about being very clear, or at the very least pausing and asking myself, why am I here? Right? Especially because Uganda has been affected, as so many other countries and so many people have been affected by colonialism, by power, right? And it's my intention to not recreate that at all. And I've reminded anybody that's taking practice, whether it's a teenager here in a detention center or an incarceration site, or a private person that I'm working with, or anybody in the slums, that if they're feeling the benefits of the practice, it's because they are connecting their mind and their body. I'm not doing it. They are. So the whole point is I'm not offering agency. They already have it. It's a reminder. Does that make sense? And so that's for me, that's how I can work towards fulfilling my vows. Right. But it is, there are times when I've witnessed just extreme suffering, and all I want to do is just weep, and sometimes that is, I'm like, why does my chest hurt? And I'm like, oh, right. Like what, like my heart is broken witnessing this, Does anybody else have any other questions or thoughts? I know that, I guess I think that I also wanted to talk about this because a lot of people want to help not necessarily want to help me, although that would be great, right? But want to help in their communities, but don't know how, you know? And I think that so many of us can feel absolutely overwhelmed by what we're experiencing on the planet right now, right? I mean, it is overwhelming. It's 100% overwhelming. And I've had moments, especially this past time, when I saw the breadth of the fuckery that is happening there, you know, like where even my own personal safety, I have to be careful. I have to like make sure the soldiers, you know, aren't around, or the warriors, and, you know, while I'm running around shooting footage, and, you know, and then hearing stories about, you know, arms coming in from South Sudan and soldiers killing lots of people, and then just being like, okay. And then recognizing that there's only so much that I can do, but remembering that even when I was there, you know, we were able to send somebody to a clinic to feed. We fed like almost, we fed about 200 families, right? And that's about 5 per family. So about 1,000 people, we fed 1,000 people, which is huge, you know? So one small act is a small act, right? If everything that we do, if our mind is settled upon how we're perceiving the world, right, then that one small act in that one moment is my everything. And that's better than, you know, for me, that's better than anything, really. So it can feel overwhelming, but it's totally 100% possible. Even just walking out the door and being kind. And all of our teachers have talked about this. Yeah. And it's a really interesting practice, noticing what I'm feeling in my body, noticing what I'm doing with my speech, noticing how I'm modeling behavior, you know, noticing how I can't walk into a situation and think I know what's the best thing to do, because I don't know, right? And that, but everything that I'm saying is how we should be with our lives, whether you're in New Mexico or you're in Uganda, no matter where you are, right? And then catching myself, always catching myself, right? Because in the past, I'm the kind of person that I hate asking anybody for anything. I really don't like it. I don't like being reliant upon anyone. I have no problem asking for help for the people that have nothing. You know, it's so interesting how it switches, right? When your focus is on other people, everything changes. Your heart opens. It's not about me, because it's not about me. Isn't that interesting? And that's the constant process of watching your mind, you know, or like, you know, when you have to write an email, I don't know about you guys, but like writing an email. So now what I'm doing right now is I'm reaching out to local yoga studios and meditation centers, asking for them to support like a month of practice in Uganda, right? Because we have rent that has to be paid on the shelter, and then the staff salaries. And mostly I've been paying that every month, and I don't have any more money. So I wanted to ask, you know, studios to support practice. And this initial of like, oh, I really don't want to write this email. And then being like, oh, this is not about you. And being like, oh, right. You know, like always, does that make sense? Because it's not about me. But it's like we carry everything like it is about ourselves. It's not. It's not at all. And so that's why it's just always really interesting to have this practice be the practice, because essentially that's what we're trying to do, right? Our lives are the practice. And so you know, I catch my mind all the time. It's very funny. And then talking with Venerable Rabina is always helpful. She opens up a good can of whoop ass on me occasionally. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts? Yes, go ahead.
First of all, I am very, I have no knowledge and my speak is not that well. But watching this short video, it touched my heart. And I know that, I don't know I'm saying it correctly. So when you're there, you offer the mind training, I don't know, am I understanding this that well? But how about the well-being, like the food to eat, the clothing?
Yeah.
I don't know about it. Yeah, how about these young kids? They go school, you know?
So we offer yoga, meditation, mindfulness practice, and qigong as well. Which qigong, I have to say, I find to be the best. Qigong is like the magic, you know. And then we bring in food. And that's, you know, and all of this has been through private donations from people. So as I mentioned, throughout the pandemic, the women and children, it was very difficult for them to leave the slums and scavenge and beg because they were often harassed. Because everybody, the Karamojong are the lowest of the low, and there was, you know, they'd be harassed and beaten for leaving the slums because there were rumors that they were spreading the virus. And also because there was supposed to be a lockdown. The government brought in nothing. The only aid that came in was from our organization. So we do bring in food. We do bring in clothing when we can. You know, that's another thing that I'm working on, is reaching out to like Athleta and Lululemon and be like, hey man, they need leggings, you know, like they need leggings to practice in. It's really difficult to practice in a dress the one dress that you have, you know. We practice, as you saw, we practice on a dirt floor. There's no yoga mats, you know, that's it. And then I also decided last year to go and get another master's degree, but this time in global public health, so that I can advocate for them. And that's what I've been doing, is meeting with people at the local hospitals and the universities and advocating to change things. It's difficult. There's a lot of corruption. But that's what we're also doing. I managed to get in touch with UNICEF, and we had 250 children and women immunized for childhood infectious disease and for COVID. And, you know, so I myself am coming at this from every angle, from a public health standpoint, from reaching out to other NGOs, you know, for basic human rights, for food. Unfortunately, very few of the Karamojong are educated, very few. And even more unfortunately is that school is not free. So they have to pay, but they have no money. And so if you're not educated, you can't find employment, you know. And so that it's just like this cycles and levels, you know, are kind of put in place to continue their suffering. And I'm doing what I can to end those cycles. It's a good question. Thank you.
I am very limited in my skill about like asking people, but if I can get your link or whatever that I can send it out and to friends and you know, people that they can help, I would love to do that. I can do that.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I've found that friends asking other friends to help has been has amazing. You know, because we're all of us are so inundated with people asking, because so many people need, right there, and it's only going to increase, unfortunately, given everything that's happening. And now that I'm in public health, you know, recognizing that continuous disasters, they're just getting worse, as you guys know, and that's going to start affecting people into urban migration even more and affecting mental health even more. So I appreciate that very, very much. Thank you. I will put the name of the website in the chat.
I'm going to get my phone and copy it.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, just, yeah.
It's my experience also. You know, I said that I couldn't walk away, and I've not, and I won't. Actually, I'm not. And it's become everything that I think about all the time. You know, to the point where I'm like, okay, now my monkey mind is like nonstop. You know, who can I get in touch with? Who do I need to get in touch with? Blah, blah, blah. Like I'm always thinking about this, but I recognize it, you know, and I see it, and it is for the benefit of others. And I have to say that I don't know, I just love being there and sharing practice. It's joyful for me. It's absolutely joyful. I had an interesting moment, not just one, I've had many, but in January, I remember I was sharing practice, you know, and we're all in a circle, and I was sharing Tugu Nachan, which I think Laura and Lorraine, you may remember. And I had this moment of looking out at everybody, and every single person there was a Buddha, you know, and it was extraordinary. And offering food, I was offering food to Buddhas, you know. And then I remember I had a meeting with Venerable Robina when she was in New York. When was this? Like before I went back. So I guess this was early summer or something like that. And I was like, Venerable Robina, how can I possibly have these moments, like just these beautiful, absolutely stunning realizations, and then moments still of being frustrated and angry? And she's like, that's not complicated. She's like, you just haven't perfected it. And she probably swore at me or something like that. But yeah, I was like, you're right. Right. You know, but it's so interesting when you're practicing the practice to see so clearly where you are and where you're not. So it makes sense. You know, I see where I'm stuck. Lorraine, you had a question.
Yes, about your safety there. I had a friend from Uganda in college, and he had an organization out there called the Sijinja Foundation. His name was David Sijinja, and I don't know what happened to it. I supported him for a long time, but both of his parents were killed by the Lord's Liberation Army. And I'm just kind of wondering, I don't know, I haven't really followed the political situation there. It's kind of a mess in any case, but how obviously there's some danger there. So how do you deal with that?
Well, the LRA is no longer around, but it is dangerous. You know, so I have friends in the State Department. When I go to northern Uganda, or when I'm kind of traveling in an area that I know is not particularly safest, I carry a tracking device with me in case something happens. And that tracking device is connected to people that I know in the State Department, Amnesty International, you know, in case I need to be extricated. And that the tracking device is also connected to like extrication teams. But, you know, I've had moments of like, this is not a good situation. You know, I've had moments of stopping myself from getting into a street fight in the slums, you know, because I'm a martial artist, right? So, you know, I'm like, I remember somebody grabbed my hand and I cocked an elbow because I'm trained, you know. He let go of me, and I had that quick, like, you cannot get into a fight right now, you know. But it is dangerous, and you know, it's just kind of part of it. This past trip was definitely very interesting, and kind of navigating all of that, you know. And that's something that when I went up to Karamojong to the region where the tribe is originally from, and it's quite a large region, stunningly beautiful, and the suffering there is deeply profound because there's so much suffering, and it's a beautiful landscape. And then you have tourists who are about to go on safari, and you're just like, what is happening, right? There's a famine happening. It makes no sense. And so we had to be careful of, you know, both trying to fly under the radar, but you can't hide me. Like, I kind of stick out in Uganda, right? And then just trying to be careful of the warriors knowing where we were. Like, and everybody's talking. Everybody knows that something's, you know. So there's just that kind of element.
Are there other NGOs in the area that you've been able to work with at all?
Yeah, well, so in Katwe, the slums, I am the only NGO that is providing advocacy and support for the Karamojong. The only, like, directly, and who is based in Katwe. There's a wonderful organization called Making a Difference in Uganda that they do medical outreach. The woman is based in New Hampshire. She's an American nurse, and she's great. And when I was there a couple of weeks ago, one of the women, Maria, who we've become quite close to, that's Moses's mother, she had contracted typhoid, and we took her to the clinic. But these clinics, you have to pay. The ones that are there, took her to the clinic, and Maria was sleeping in a shelter with about 40 other women and children. So this is now an outbreak possibility, right? So I was able to call the medical outreach and say, hey, this is the situation. This is what's going on, you know. So we're communicating. In Karamojong itself, WHO, UNICEF, Save the Children, all the big players are there, but there's not a lot that no one can do anything about the conflict. And that's kind of a different story, the conflict. You know, but it's again and again, you know, as I was going up to Karamojong with my team, I said to them, I said, okay, we're going to sit down, and I want to hear, like, why are you here? Like, because it's really important to me that we have right intention. Why are you here? You know? And this is something that was asked a lot about when I first started going to Nepal and doing work in Nepal. Hector Marcel, who's a dear friend of mine, asked the same thing to people. Why are you here? Why are you here? And he would ask us throughout the course of our time there, because it changes. The more you're like, it's a layering, right? Because after about 3 or 4 weeks, you're like, oh, you know. And the reason that I bring this up is, you know, with my team, I was like, why are you here? And they're like, because we want to help people. And I'm like, well, why are you here? And they're like, because we want adventure. And I was like, uh-huh. Which is okay. That's fine. As long as you're aware of it, you know. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions? I would be happy, if anybody is interested, I could show you some of the portraits that I shot. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay, everybody can see this, yeah? Okay. So these, it's funny, I was going to make a slideshow and then I was like, wait, I don't need to make a slideshow. I'll just show my Instagram. So this is Lucia. And what I did is, because I am a writer and a photographer, I started utilizing those skills again. And Lucia was, as you can see, this is her with one of her children. She has now caregiving for about 8 children, but her arm was shut off by the warriors when she was living in Napak, which is a district in Karamojong, when she was 16. And then she left the region to go to Katwe. Everybody essentially leaves Katwe to try and find a better way of life. So I'm going to keep scrolling, yeah. This little one, and I'll just read what I wrote. I said, may she be happy, may she be peaceful, may she be safe, may she have access to equitable resources, including food, water, sanitation, education, healthcare, and employment. May she not have to beg and scavenge for food. May she not be chased, harassed, or trafficked. May she be free from suffering. And she was just a little girl that, while we were taking Maria to the clinic, just came by, you know, and let me take her picture. And then my intention, again, was to just show, you know, yes, there's incredible suffering, but there's also moments where, you know, the children are children. So that's me doing practice. This is up in Karamojong. So they're pastoralists, as I mentioned. It's little boys. This is Brenda, our mindfulness instructor. I've known Brenda now for, how long have I known her? 5 years now. And she is very serious about her practice, which is great. And when I'm there, I work with Brenda one-on-one as much as I can. And she watches me teach, and then I watch her teach, and you know, it's like a teacher training, like I did as well. And Brenda's great. And it's my intention to be able to also to pay them like a proper salary, you know, because Brenda also lives in the slums. This is up in Karamojong. This is a grandmother that when we first walked into it's called a kraal, and a kraal is like a circular area made of huts. There's no running water, electricity, toilets, refrigerators, anything like that. And the grandmother was sleeping in the shade. And in this village, there were 4 grandmothers caring for orphans because the parents had either been killed or died from infectious disease or from famine. That particular village had not received any food or aid for 6 weeks, and all of their cattle had been stolen. Practice. This is Maria. I love this picture of her. This is Moses's mom. I think she's very beautiful. And this is about a few days after she started getting treatment for typhoid. And this is in Katwe, so this is in the slums. Magdalena. Also, this is in Katwe. So Katwe that's me. This I wrote, this is how I feel when I'm offering practice and doing good for others. The use of filters. And this is a picture of Maria in the clinic after having just been diagnosed with typhoid. One of the things that we're working on right now is that she has 4 children, and of the four, one is a girl, and the girl is 6 years old. And a pastor came into the slums and took the girl to school, but we don't know who the pastor is or where that school is. And unfortunately, trafficking is it's not uncommon. So we're trying to find out what happened. This is a little one. This is in our shelter. You can read what I wrote if you feel like it. You know, as I mentioned, I'm trying to share their stories with a lens and just straight journalism, just telling just the facts, and also from a public health standpoint too. The thing is that one cannot live in conditions like this without having it affect your mental health. Cannot. Because it's quite so clear that you are, how would I put it? I had a moment this past July when we were taking some people to the clinic, and I was shooting a lot of footage and video, and it just became so clear to me that it was a hell realm, an absolute hell realm. And they were stuck there. Do you know what I mean? And part of the practice of doing this work, right, is like, I can leave. I'm so aware of the fact that I can leave, right? But when you suddenly, you're like, you know, it's like, you know it, but when you know it, like, you know it in your body and it hits you like thunder, you know? And then that's when my kind of wrathful righteousness gets very ignited, you know, to do something about it. Because no one is. And that's the thing, is they know that no one is doing anything to help them except for me, you know, in Katwe. What else do we have? That's me very tired. I think I'm wearing like the same thing. This is up in Karamojong. And for some of you that are experienced with children who are suffering from extreme malnutrition, the extended belly is kwashiorkors. And these are the huts that I was talking about, the manyatas. And so Karamojong consistently being affected by drought and flooding, the thing is that it doesn't have to be that way. They could bring in irrigation. They could bring in food from other regions, but they're not. And as two people pointed out to me in conversations that I've had in this last week, one of them from the World Bank and one from Amnesty, is that all famine is political. It's unnecessary. This is John. He's my daughter's age, 20 years old. And he just arrived to Katwe. And so you can see these are the kind of the dwellings that most people are living in. And the only thing that I could think of was that may he be safe. And I can't imagine what he left behind, you know. And so that's part of it, is witnessing, right? Is being able to witness and to hold and not turn away. And that's a practice that you know, whether you're here in New York City on the subways with people who are experiencing homelessness, and right, like, to not turn away it would be easy to turn away, right? That's what most people do, is they push away aversion. But to be able to sit with it, and to sit with your own aversion, and then to meet somebody's eyes, whether you have anything to offer or not, but to meet someone's eyes and not turn away. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what's happening here. Oh yeah, this little one. She doesn't know how old she is. And that's often the case, is people are not exactly sure how old they are. Right? And there's no, usually there's not like a birth registry or a death registry, you know? And so, and oftentimes children are having children, you know? Many of the women that I spoke with, their first child was born when they were like 14, 15, 16. Children having children. And this is in Katwe. Oh, this is sharing practice. Is that gonna play? I don't even know if that's a video. What do we have? Oh yeah. So these are discharge practices. It's a preliminary step in Qigong practice. This was really fun to do, actually. So that's what it is. Also, is it's a bunch of co-regulation, right? It's everybody. It's a sangha, essentially. And if we can all laugh together, it's amazing. Oh, that's me discharging after witnessing lots and lots of suffering. This is the little one that you saw in the video up in Karamojong. Beautiful little boy. Hopefully he'll live to be a man. And so, and I think that for me, part of the practice is also infusing what I'm sharing in social media with Dharma. Right, because that's how it spreads out. And that my hope is not just to share practice and to share Dharma in the way that I am in the slums, but also to do it through social media so that people can wake up, you know. This story kills me. Regina is we still don't quite know where her son is. So her 19-month-old son was with her 10-year-old begging on the streets because they have no food. And the Kampala City Council, in an effort to clean the streets, took the children and sent them back to Karamojong, but we don't know to where, and to a detention center, but we don't know who's taking care of them. And the littlest one had tuberculosis, and she has his medicine. And so that's a major problem, because now there's tuberculosis being spread from one region to another, on top of the fact that there's a 19-month-old without his mother. I sent Regina and also Betty, who you'll see in the next couple of pictures, back to Napak to go find their children. And then they were arrested. So my team is trying to find them. And we're trying to establish a collaboration with the Kampala City Council. You know, but unfortunately, these sweeps are done in because people are complaining about children begging on the streets because they don't want to see that, right? Talk about aversion, right? They don't want to see that. And so the children are swept. In this sweep, I think there was 146 children that were taken and forcibly taken, not trauma informed at all. So I'm hoping to collaborate with the Ministry of Gender and the Kampala City Council to find a different way. Because it's traumatizing to the children, it's traumatizing to the mothers. And then it's, you know, without anybody mitigating or offering care for that trauma, it's just going to continue, you know. And then this is not this Betty, but another Betty. It was her child that was taken. Betty Lemai, who she's pretty new to the slums, or at least I did not meet her when I was there in January. And that's where I practiced. And every morning I would practice because that's what sustains me as a human, but also in doing this kind of work. And then these are the girls. I'll just kind of go through this. So the teenage girls, the ones who don't yet have infants, every day they go out into the streets in the market and they find the beans or the maize or the millet that has fallen from like the shopkeepers' big baskets, and they sweep them up and pick through them, and then they get paid by the shopkeepers. They're not going to school. This is what they're doing every day. When they do have children, they can't bring their children with them to do this kind of work. And so that's when, unfortunately, many of them start begging and scavenging. And this is just kills me because these could be my children. And look at what their shirts say. And unfortunately, you know, there's no education, no menstrual health hygiene, no reproductive rights. Oftentimes they marry someone who already has like 4 or 5 other wives and like 15 other children and can't afford to take care of his own children. And then unfortunately, if they do want to use condoms or some form of birth control, I'm not saying all, but many times and oftentimes the young women are beaten. It's not an easy life for them. But they still get shy in front of the camera. And you can see the millet dust all over her. And this is Betty. Betty's had a really, really, really hard life. A few years ago, let's see, with the wormhole of the pandemic, it's difficult to remember. I think in 2020, if you scroll back through my Instagram, there's another image that I have of Betty, where she was very, very ill with tuberculosis, and we sent her to Malago Hospital actually for care. And then shortly after that, she had some teenage daughters, and one teenage daughter, the younger one, killed the older one's husband because the husband was beating her. And so then she got sent to prison, and then Betty was taking care of all of the children. And Betty's, in her 40s, maybe. And it's just had a lot of trauma. And she came to me because it was her children as well that were taken and sent back up to the district, and she didn't know where they were. And a 2-year-old that she was nursing was taken. And so now, and for those of you that have had children and experienced the feeling of your breast not being able to express milk, and I've never had the experience of not knowing where my child was, the visible discomfort and distress and anguish that she was in. And it's never ending, unfortunately, for a lot of the everybody. But this is kind of in the main square, or one of the main squares. I'll let it play again. That man at the end, his name is Brian. I was able to start shooting portraits of the men as well. And something that I've heard of often is that, a lot of NGOs are focused on the women and children because more people want to help women and children than they want to help men or young men. Because it looks better, and also women and children tend to be more vulnerable, right? But if the focus is only on the women and children and not on the men, nothing's really going to change. It has to be on everyone. The men are also starving. The men are also suffering. And unfortunately, if the men are suffering, the women are going to suffer. That's just how it is. And so more NGOs, I think, need to come in and start working with men. And I have some friends who do work with the street boys, but the men are often forgotten. And some of the men, the stories that I've heard of what they experienced in Karamojong is heart-wrenching. And this is the teenage girls who are now sorting through beans. So in this case, they're actually hired to sort through a lot of the beans instead of just sweeping up the old ones, but oftentimes they do both. And this is what they do day after day after day. The woman in the hat is Agnes, and she's now on our staff. Agnes and Esther are now on our staff, and they are Karamojong. This is a tree planting ceremony that we did. Harvard Trees for Life gave us some money to plant some trees. I kept saying to them, I was like, they'll be trampled or they'll be stolen or something like that. So we're kind of doing like guerrilla tree planting. And this is Esther. Esther came to Katwe when she was 8 years old, 5 or so. She has, she's 25, and she has, well, she gave birth to 6 children, but only 5 of them are now. And there's Esther. So that footage was completely unscripted. You know, she was just going to show us where it was that she worked, and we came upon the teenagers sleeping. And it is my hope to help foster Esther into a leader of the community, because she already clearly is. But you know, but the problem then is like if because everybody's in survival mode, right? So if we give too much attention to Esther, then other people are like, why is she getting all the attention? You know, so and people can fight, you know, and there's also a lot of drinking and I don't necessarily blame them, you know, their lives are awful. I do not blame them at all, you know, and when I was there last, there was some infighting about some things. And I said to them, I was like, look, do you ever see me yell at anybody here? Do you ever see me hit anybody? Do you ever see me talk badly about anybody? And they're like, no, Auntie Gina, no. You know, and that's trying to model behavior. And I also clearly said to them, I said, you know, there's some people that want you to fight with each other, that want you to destroy each other, don't do their job. Right. Which is no different than saying, you know, stop repeating negative habituated patterns. So anyway, so you've seen a small amount of what I shot, but I think it was a good representation of what life is like there. There's a lot more. It's hard. It's hard. I've brought in people in public health, and after maybe about 10 or 15 minutes, they're like, okay, I've had enough. The interesting thing is that, you know, like for somebody like Esther and Brenda, they come to the practice. They've experienced the benefits of the practice, and all they want is to continue to practice, you know. And then there's some that also are like, hey, there's this white woman coming in here and she, you know, and she's doing this, and like, maybe I should also do that so that I can get some food. Totally get that, you know. Totally makes sense. I would do the same. But they do, I can't speak for everybody, but many do experience the benefits of practice. And that's why, for me, right, when it comes down to like, why am I here? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Right intention, right effort, right action, right speech, right livelihood, right mind. I have absolutely no doubt at all that this is what I should be doing. And it's my intention to when I can, to hand it over so that it's theirs. It already is theirs. I'm just shepherding. Do you know what I mean? But I guess for me, so that's why this talk is all about compassionate action, because this is action, this is doing. And I'm fortunate that I can, you know, I'm fortunate that I have the resources and the support to be able to share practice and to help others help themselves. You know, that me walking into a yoga studio, I mean, I think I was meditating a long time before I started practicing yoga, but, you know, back in like 2004, whenever it was, all of that led to this. So let me stop sharing now. Thank you for witnessing. Nancy joined. What's up, Nancy? Hi.
Hi, I just got in from work, so I had to join late.
I'm glad you were able to catch a bit of it.
Yeah, I'll try. If this is recorded, I think it is. I'll look at it.
Yeah, it's recorded. And then, as I was saying, you know, all of the images and a lot of the footage are on Instagram, and I am cutting a documentary. And, you know, and for me, it was an absolute joy to be able to use my skills, all of my skills, in the service of others. Like, that's the most fun.
Mm-hmm.
Really. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It truly is, you know, like, that's when, for me, I feel the most alive, when I'm just using everything in the service of others, and there's no doubt, right? It does have to be done skillfully, you know, for sure. And that's where pausing and coming back to, like, why am I here, right? Is this the best course of action? Is this right? And that all comes from foundation in the Eightfold Path, and also in the Noble Truths, you know, and then also the Six Perfections, and like everything that we've learned, right? Everything that we've learned. That's kind of the amazing thing, is like studying and practicing, studying and practicing, studying and practicing prime you for taking this off of the cushion, out of the studio and into the world, you know, and being aware too, you know. It's so interesting because the practices, like, people are like, well, I can't believe you're sharing yoga. And I've had some people, you know, because Uganda is very, very Christian, heavily Christian. And people are like, believe it's, you know, the devil, yoga is part of the devil's artwork. And I'm like, yeah, we're just moving our bodies. Or sometimes I don't even call it yoga, you know. Because yoga itself has also been, you know, is a mixture of gymnastics and, you know, but it's just conscious movement, basically. Anything is yoga, right? Anything is mindfulness-based movement if you are putting your consciousness and connecting it to your body, right? Walking meditation. So, and what I found is that inevitably in sharing all of the kind of different modalities that I've learned, people, in the same way that, you know, I have, you take a practice, you make it your own, and then you share it with other people, and then it becomes theirs, and it becomes theirs. That's how wisdom practices are shared. But they're embodied, you know? And the thing is, all of us already have these skills within us anyway. We just forgot. Yeah, Lorraine, what's up?
Hey, I was just wondering if there's a specific kind of, I know you do Qigong, but is there specific, I'm sorry, I'm losing my words here. What, like, sequence that works best for the people in these areas? Is there anything particularly?
It all, honestly, it so depends upon what's happening. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, even when I was like I'm still teaching in a studio, but let's say when I was teaching like yoga 3 times a week in a yoga studio, and I would have this whole plan and this whole sequence, right? And then that can go out the window depending upon who's in front of you. And if you're a good teacher, it should go out the window, right? You shouldn't have any kind of attachment to what's going to happen. Number 1 rule of the causes of suffering, right? But I do have in my pocket practices that definitely are much more down regulating if needed, right? If people's energy is getting a little just, you know, too upregulated, downregulate. I have walked in and it's completely chaotic and totally nuts, and I will just sit on the floor and close my eyes and breathe. And then what happens is that one by one, they all start to join, you know. I've also had times where I'm like, this is clearly not working today. I'll be back. Like, it's just not going to work. Right. There's just, you know, who knows? Maybe there's like out of 75, 90 women, maybe 10 or 15 are drunk, and it's just too much, you know. I've had that same experience in high schools too, you know. And then you just kind of like, all right, well, and in those instances, I'm like, I'm going to go hang out with the kids. I'll do practice with the kids, or like, I'll go and like see what's happening over here. You know, there's always something that can be done. It's useful to have a pretty deep pocket of skills. And that includes also knowing when it's not appropriate to offer practice. Right?
Makes perfect sense.
It's a good question. It's a really good question. Anybody else have any questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Is Maria recovered from her typhoid?
She is. Maria is recovered. Hopefully it has not spread, but its typhoid is endemic there, unfortunately. And typhoid, tuberculosis, pneumonia, diarrhea, those are the top. Malaria is when I was there. Actually, it was the last day I was there. A little baby had just died from malaria, 2-month-old. You know, malaria is there's a vaccine, but I don't know what the efficacy of the vaccine is quite yet. But that's a big one. And there's HIV, you know, there's pretty much all of the major infectious diseases are still there. When the flooding comes, cholera is there. You know, so there's a lot of work to do. A lot of work. It's intense. You know, and that's why for me, I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't have a practice at all. You know, because it can be quite overwhelming. So it would definitely be a lot easier with funding. It would be so much easier. So we could have proper funding and support and not be struggling, you know. But I got a message this morning from Shafiq. He's one of the young men that is on our staff. And he told me that they had gone in and shared practice with the women, and everything went really well. And the women were sending their love to Mama Gina and praying for me. And that's just, you know, sweet. It's sweet, like we're connected, you know, and not just because I'm, you know, this white, half white, they don't even know what Mexico is, I don't think. They just see me as like white, right? White is like a dollar sign, unfortunately. I mean, that's what we've created, right? But now they know me as Gina. Like I've spent time and they know me and we hang out and laugh. But there's also that power structure, you know, because I can leave. And that's something to be conscious of, and to talk about too. You know, it's part of the whole kind of layers and levels and structures that we're all a part of, you know. So, but I'm really glad that you took the time. Like, this is huge. You took the time. You took your time to witness. Thank you very much. It means a lot.
Thank you.
So thank you. And may all beings everywhere be free from pain and suffering. And may each one of us do something about that. Thank you so